Hi, I am Andrew Shaw, host of the Driven Mind podcast, where we talk to amazing people who are at the intersection of human behaviour and elite performance. In this episode, we have a successful businessman turned international athlete who is probably too humble to identify with either of these monikers. After escaping a career in banking, he dedicated 18 years of his working life to successfully building and eventually selling his CRM technology business. After an extremely successful business career, he has now turned his skills and attention to endurance athletics, where he has twice represented GB on the international triathlon stage, achieving a top 10 finish in his latest event, battling the world's best age group athletes for just over 8.5 hours. I'm very excited to delve into the successful yet extremely humble mindset of Trev White. Trev, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy.
Cool.
Very nice introduction.
You're welcome. It's great to have you on the show. So I'm going to dive straight in. Tell us what took you out of banking and what inspired you to set up Gap, your own consulting business.
So yeah, it's quite a while ago now. So it was 1999, just before the millennium bug at the time. I'd been at Barclays for my whole career at that time, which was nearly 19, 20 years. There were a few reasons, really. Necessity was one of them, which I'll come on to. A need for change also, a sense of purpose I was looking for at the time. I'm trying to think what the third reason was. I'll come back to it, and I'll just talk a little bit really around the need for change, actually. So it followed a life-changing event, the sort of ending of my first marriage. So I'd obviously acquired a reasonable lifestyle at the time, and I had 2 young children. So to maintain a lifestyle for all of us with separate houses, living accommodation, needed an increase in earnings. So how was I going to do that? And that was problem number one. I'd say that progression within the bank at the time was quite stagnant. I was at middle management level. There weren't any positions, and it was very much dead man's shoes in those days. So I was probably going to have to leave the bank. There was also that desire for change. So I wanted to do something new. I'd been in the bank for a long time, been exposed to external consultancies that had been into the organization and seeing them doing things that excited me. So that was definitely what had whet my appetite. And I guess there was an entrepreneurial side of me that was in some way looking to come out. And the final reason, the third reason, was the bank was going through some huge changes. So late 90s, I'd worked in technology services within the bank the whole time. And it was changing from being an IT organization or an IT-led organization to a business-led organization. We had a lot of management coming across, exec from the States, really trying to transform what was a technical business into a business. And interestingly, that led me into a management training program. So Barclays were looking to take their middle management high performers, put them through some sort of rapid training in business. So I got sent on a 6-week course to a Durham Business School.
Oh, wow.
And exposed to some entrepreneurs who talked to us about business and what can be achieved in business. And that was really where the seed got sown, I guess, of wanting to do my own thing. Probably come back to if you want to, but that was where my appetite was whet.
So was that entrepreneurial spirit there all the time, or did you find that like through that education program, or tell us about that?
I think I found it. It must have been there all along, but I don't think I'd been exposed to it before. I'd gone straight into a corporate organization, And I'd become institutionalized, really. 19 years in a bank is a long time. But I
Yeah.
joined when I was 17, so I was still, pretty young at that
Yeah.
point.
It's great. I think it's a great example, that people can. It's never too late to step into something which presents itself later on in the career, or take a big diversion. So, the consulting side, what was it like building a business at that time? Because obviously there were some technological problems, and you went through quite a few things in the 90s, the millennium bug first, and then the dot-com boom and bust. What was it like trying to build a business through that period?
It was interesting. Obviously, we sort of rode the dot-com boom, if you like. That was what excited us. But what we didn't realize is it was about to go bust. So we sort of launched our business at the end of 99, beginning of just after the millennium, really, the year 2000. And that first year saw massive success because it was still booming. We tried a few things. It didn't happen straight away, but we didn't wait. So as one service or consulting service didn't really take off, we tried another and another and another, and we eventually settled on a technology platform, and that was from an organization called Siebel, which you may or may not have heard of, a customer relationship management platform. And we had 12 months of great success. We proved from the three of us that started business to 12, turned over, I can't remember the exact numbers, but £500,000 to £1 million, made 20% profit, paid ourselves all bonuses. It was just a very different world than the one I'd left. So yeah, it was great. However, 2001, there's the dot-com bubble burst. So all of a sudden, money was drying up. People had spent a lot on the so-say millennium bug, and were trying to reduce what they were spending on IT. So we struggled in the second year to maintain that growth. But I guess we'd made quite a bit of money during the first year, which carried us through cash flow wise. And we were given time then to look for other avenues to earn revenue, informational sources, obtain new clients, etc.
So how did you as an individual, and how did the group of you, the three founders, how did you manage to navigate that? Because obviously starting the consultancy, being super successful straight out of the gate, and then hitting a brick wall almost as things change. What was the mindset? How did you cope? What went on in that period as you were kind of going, all right, that's not working, we need to do something different? Obviously you iterated products, but what went on during that process? Can you remember how did it feel? What was happening?
Yeah, I mean, there was never a sense of panic. I think that, you know, I'm more risk averse these days, but going back then, I was, I don't know what you call it, risk neutral, or I don't think we were risk takers as such, although you could think that we were, given that we'd all left careers in Barclays where we could have just stayed and done very, very well, to start a business with virtually nothing. So, but there was a sense of calm and confidence amongst the three of us. I've always been relatively calm and optimistic person, so I always believed there would be a way through, really. And we looked for projects that we could tap into, that not necessarily that we'd won, but that we could put our people onto. So we formed alliances, in essence, with big consultancies like KPMG, Capita, and we found they had gaps in their resourcing, and we effectively were glorified body shoppers. Rather than putting one person into a contract with Capita or KPMG because they had huge projects, we were able to put 4, 5, 6. Obviously reduce our rates, but there was I guess high numbers of people earning, so the revenue was good enough, and that got us through. And it allowed us to effectively reevaluate what we were going to do and how we were going to become self-sufficient as a business, not rely on the consultancies, which took 2 to 3 years, if I'm honest. and it's probably 2005 before we started to win our own clients and become more like a business.
That's really interesting. I think being able to spot that the value proposition that you had ended and was no longer viable for people to spend money on, but then to go and find where else you could add value with the skills you've got is a real, like, it's a good iteration and a great example of how businesses evolve quite quickly, especially in turbulent times. And I think that calmness is probably a nice character trait to have in the team to be able to navigate that, but being able to then just go and find where you can add value, use it with the skills that you've got, I think is a really strong way to look at business growth. I think there's also probably a bit of pragmatism there of, okay, you've gone from having direct client to then being part of somebody else's consultancy or offering secondary services in that sense. So that's really interesting. How did it evolve to becoming what it grew over those years so post 2005? How did you find that evolution? Was that planned or did you fall into that? Talk us through that shift.
Yeah, it wasn't really planned. We fell into it, and we started to establish ourselves again as a direct client relationship model. We were still using the Siebel product at the time, and 2005-6, the Siebel technology got acquired by Oracle, and there was a lot of uncertainty over the product's future. Siebel was started by a chap called Tom Siebel. He'd come out of Oracle, and I think they bought him, out of spite almost, to put him to bed. Obviously, he didn't mind because he probably earns a lot of money, but effectively, nobody was investing in Siebel anymore because Oracle had it and nobody knew what was going to happen. So we had to leave that platform almost straight away. Staff were Siebel experts, and Microsoft, as they always do, late to the game in the CRM marketplace, launched their own. Well, they'd launched it a few years previous, but effectively they were relaunching their own technology in that CRM space. And we decided to nail our flag to the mast of Microsoft. So we did that, but what that actually meant was pretty much letting all our workforce go. And this is something that I've tried to, well, we all tried to do, but in particular, it was important to me that we didn't shaft the individuals. So we pretty much let all of those individuals take direct contractor relationships with the projects and the clients that they were on at the time. And we left those clients in terms of our direct relationship as an organization. And many of them stayed with them as contractors for quite a few years after that. And we shrank to about 6 people, and we'd reached probably a workforce of nearly 30 at the time. And we became a Microsoft consulting partner, and we built a Microsoft business. Took on new people, retrained a few people we'd kept, retrained ourselves, and established relationship with Microsoft and became a Microsoft consulting partner. And pretty much that's where we ended. That's where we sold the business as a Microsoft consulting partner, which it was a 10, 12 year business model, I guess, that we eventually sold.
Really interesting. So the business iterated, you retrained yourselves, you went and sought out different business models, different clients. I think ethically looking after people along the way is always nice if you can be in a position to do that, because I think that's, when you own a business, one of the hardest things you can do is having the responsibility for other people's livelihoods in your hands. I think that's kind of, we don't get taught about that when we start businesses. So managing those feelings of people coming and going, and especially when you have to decide that it's time for that, they're no longer viable for the business, that's really tough. as the business evolved, how did the sale come about? What was the process leading up to that? Was that something that you had your eye on earlier? Talk
Yeah.
us through the kind of the building up to the sale part.
Yeah. I mean, we really wanted to sell the business probably 5 years before that. And when we looked at it, we'd not done any of the prep you needed to do to gear the business for a sale. So when we looked at the previous, let me just say, we sold in 2018. So let's just assume it was around 2012, 2013, we wanted to sell. We looked at our last 3 years' financial accounts, and yeah, they didn't show a business that was going to sell for much. Our EBITDA wasn't where it needed to be because we hadn't been focused on it. We'd been focused on the lifestyle business, paying ourselves through dividends, not leaving much money in the business. So yeah, it was an education at that point to find that, naively, we thought we could just sell it as it was, but no, we couldn't. So we spent the next 5 years then trying to get to a point where we had 3 good financial years behind us. And that sweet spot happened when it happened, really. And it coincided with the oldest member of us, the MD, was approaching retirement age for him when he wanted to retire. So we went to a company, KBS Corporate, they were called, that sell businesses. We paid them a fee, I think, 30K is a sort of a base fee for them to come in, market us, and then they sold with a 1% commission on top at the end.
Wow.
So yeah.
Through that process of iteration and relearning and rebuilding through those waves, and then obviously the change of tack in the last few years to get yourself into a position of sale. What kind of key strengths do you look back on and go, okay, well, they were my key strengths? What were your key learnings from those times?
It's a good question. So many lessons. I think, resilience, determination were I guess it was the mindset of the time that we needed to have that resilience and determination to just keep going, because we could easily have, all of us, walked off into jobs, got reasonably good salaries, and probably acquired a little bit of our own wealth. Because although we'd had a lifestyle business, it was exactly that. None of us had a great pot of money to sit on. We didn't really have a saleable asset. It was, do we really want to now spend the next 3 years fighting through, continuing with the business, but actually making it a profitable business that somebody would be interested in buying? And yeah, it was, we had to compromise a little bit on some of our, I suppose, our values. So we had to become more business minded with things like expenses. We've been very liberal, and the culture of the business was that, there was no expense policy. So for the first, 15 years or 12 to 15 years of the business, staff had no guidelines on expenses. They literally expensed what they wanted to. We just trusted people that, make them responsible for something, and they wouldn't take the mick. And generally speaking, they didn't. But at the end of the day, it wasn't very business-like, and it wasn't going to be the sort of policy that would look very good when we're trying to sell the business. And also, it's a small example, but it's an example of where we changed from being that lifestyle business, very, very sort of liberal with staff, to become more business minded. And then that took some doing for me personally, because when I started the business, one of the things I wanted to achieve was a culture where people felt valued and didn't feel as though it was just a company that was trying to make money from them. I know ultimately that's what we were doing, but yeah. Whether I was fooling myself or not, I don't know. But he certainly wanted to be a business where people felt valued.
I'm sure they did feel valued. Knowing you as I do, I think that's probably probably one of the better companies to work for. That would have been great. It reminds me of some glory days of the early 2000s in recruitment, which were very much we couldn't spend all the money we made, and but we had a good go at it. So so I think it's really interesting is that what you said about values. I think, our motivation, values, and vision need to align for us to achieve something which is fulfilling. And I think it's really interesting the mindset of finding out that you wanted to stop doing something, so you'd made your mind up, right, we'd like to sell this business. The expectation was that you're going to be able to do it, but then you had to carry on for another 5 years. And so I think you talked about shifting the values, and in the coaching world, we can help people move values around in their value set to serve them with a bigger purpose. So there can often be conflicts between values and vision. What was the mindset like? How did you feel like as a group? Can you remember the day when somebody said to you, guys, you can't sell this business, you're gonna have to do it for another 3 to 5 years? How did that feel?
It felt onerous. It was. It felt like, to be honest, it was too big a task, because we weren't exactly flying as a business at the time, because, well, we touched on that, the recession of the dot-com boom and bust. We had the global financial crisis in 2007 and 8 as well. And then we had more recessions after that. So we were always recovering from a recession. Cash flow was always tight. We never had lots and lots of money. So how we were going to turn this business that was just about paying for itself into something that was saleable. We knew there was value in it. We had a great client base. We had a great bunch of people working for us, really high performers. How we were going to turn those assets into a viable business without compromising values was, it seemed daunting at the time. And I think it was just incremental change, to be honest, because we couldn't change everything all at once, because I think we would probably have, using that expense policy, that would have probably resulted in a lot of people leaving quite quickly because they'd have seen a change. So we didn't just change the expense policy overnight. We gradually changed it over time. And we changed the relationship with our clients too. I mean, we pretty much were we would try and work to a fixed fee, but fixed fees, they never really pan out. So we had to change from fixed fee to our clients to time and materials. And again, we got a whole client base. We worked on long-term relationships. So all of our customers have been with us a long, long time. So to move them from a fixed fee model to time and materials wasn't to their advantage, it was to ours. And that wasn't going to happen overnight. So we really had to almost go out and accept that we were going to lose our client base and find new clients that would work on a pay-as-you-go time and materials basis. So those were changes that were really tough, because winning work with a fixed fee, we could always compete with the big consultancies. So we would always be able to compete with Capita and KPMG and Deloitte and those guys. When it was time materials, it was a different matter, because they could always make up whatever they wanted to make up in terms of their pitch. But the reality was that they would land and expand, because that's what management consultancies do. But they've got the power to do that, and we couldn't land and expand. We had to win the business, and fairly, and it was tough, and we struggled. We struggled to win business. We struggled to get new clients. Yeah, it was again a change in mindset. We did change our client base, and we lost a lot of clients. But it was when cloud computing had really taken off and recurring revenues were attainable. For us, we never really had recurring revenues from a license or a hosting perspective because we just didn't do that. We weren't a product company either. We sold products. So, in effect, we started to become a bit of a reseller for Microsoft. We resold their hosting and we resold their subscriptions. So we got recurring revenues, which, looking back on it, was probably a game changer for us.
Interesting. So the entire strategy shifted time and time again. You was required to to keep restarting, especially in the face of, you've made a decision, you're going one way and then you get told you can't go that way. So I think building businesses is a thoroughly difficult thing. Anyone that does it really well is showing lots of resilience and lots of character traits and depth to being able to go through that. So I'm intrigued about the sale process, because I've been involved in some business sales and had different experiences. How long did it take from the day you gave the invite to the consultancy to the point where you'd sold, and did you have to hang around after the sale, or were you clean and clear at that point?
So it was probably around 18 months from paying the fee to actually going into due diligence with an organization. It took about, I would say it took 6 months to get the marketing materials up and running and out there. And then we had 6 to 12 months of talking to prospective buyers, some of them dismissing us and some of those we dismissed. And we eventually, the way KBS Corporate works, they set a deadline, then a line in the sand, if you like, and said, right, final offers from anybody interested. And I think we had 5 companies say they were interested in going to put bid in. I think we got 4 out of the 5 actually did put the bid in. Yeah, it was 4. And the 5th one, interestingly, was the one that I really wanted us to go with. And they just literally acquired somebody and said it wasn't the right time for them. But, 6 months later, they were going to. Obviously, we couldn't wait because we'd set a deadline. So, but anyway, that's a diversion to the story, really. But we went into due diligence, took 3 months. It was horrendous. Worst 3 months, I think, of the whole, 18 years in business.
Just briefly explain to us why that is.
What we didn't realise, and again, it was an element of naivety, was the offer was made that we thought was a done deal, and the due diligence was really, the due diligence was a process of them trying to reduce that offer by finding things that we had said that weren't accurate that allowed them to reduce the fee. Yeah, it seems whatever we did to counteract anything that they were challenging, they would just get somebody cleverer to suggest that it wasn't true. So
brutal. I hate that. We've had that with clients where you think that you've agreed something, a proposal based on a value proposition, and then they pick holes and try and find a way to negotiate after the agreement's been made. It must be very difficult as a value-based organization, a value-based sales person to be able to cope with that. So how did you cope with that? Like what?
Well, we took a hit. I'd say probably £500,000 they got away with without paying. So, and they wore us down, to be honest. There were 3 of us involved in the decision, because 3 directors, 3 owners of the business, co-owners. I was ready to walk, and I would have done. I would have just said no.
You mean walk away from the deal in its entirety?
Yeah, because it left me with a bad taste in my mouth, and I'd already agreed to stay on for 18 months with them. So yeah, I was ready to walk. But, the MD, it was his time to retire. He was not in the best of health. He was exhausted. He needed to he couldn't go again, is pretty much what he said. He said he couldn't continue.
Yeah.
This was pretty much where he got to. So, it was a case of, do I sort of hold out and shark him, or do I let him take? Because there's no guarantee you're going to find another buyer.
Yeah.
So he was 5 years older than I was. So I just said, okay, we'll acquiesce. We took deal. I mean, it was a good deal. I mean, at the end of the day, we still got a payout. So let's not pretend that we didn't get paid. We did. We got paid. And I went to
I
work.
think in that instance, though, it's not about the money, it's about the principle and the values that you have. And I think that's really important to remember when we're in business, that understanding what our values are and what we're prepared to do to achieve our vision is really, that's how I see the business values, and being able to work out which ones you're prepared to bend a little bit on and which ones you're
Yeah,
prepared to trade off against a different one, because decision making in business is almost never straightforward.
yeah,
The minute you get somebody else other than you in your business, it becomes multidimensional, and there's lots to think about. And I think you then just have to do the best you can, understand as much as possible, and then make a decision. And if you need to make another decision further down the line, you do, but you
yeah,
go forward with the best of intentions. So great story. I think lots of patience, lots of resilience, lots
yeah,
of just being able to start again. So the things that were driving the need to keep going were strong enough to take you through the down times. I think you need that purpose and you need that motivation at both ends of the scale to be able to do that. When you finally finished your earn out period and
yeah.
you stopped, how did you feel at that point? What were the emotions? What was the immediate aftermath of having built, stuck in, sold, done your earn out, and then you're free as a bird with a decent chunk of change? What did you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, it did feel good. I have to say, it wasn't. I'd had 18 months of working for the organisation that acquired us, and actually looking back on it, I didn't have to stay. It was I'd committed to stay and didn't have to. So I didn't need to earn out. Actually, I could have
Okay.
left. One of the other directors did leave after 6 months. In fact, they paid him to leave. Can you believe that? Yeah, he pretty much did put his tools down and said, "I'm just here for a jolly." So they paid him off to go. So he
Oh,
got
the Alexander Isak of the
yeah,
CRM world.
yeah. So, but I was, yeah, my pride wouldn't let me sit on my hands. So I was still hardworking and stayed in there. And the culture didn't really suit me. Um, and so I left. But yeah, to go back to your question, I felt great, and I'd always wanted to travel. I'd always wanted to be a freelance consultant.
Yeah.
So that was what I was going to do. And I left in the January of 2020, and as we all know, lockdown started in March. So travel stopped. Freelance opportunities weren't exactly flying around. So I did bugger all, and it did nothing for quite a few months. Um, and traveling was put on hold, wasn't it, for quite a long time.
Yeah.
So eventually, do you know what I actually know? I'm just recalling. I did start running. That's what I started doing during COVID. So I'd pretty much not done any exercise, proper exercise, since my sort of early 40s. And what was I? I don't know. I was 57 at COVID time. Yeah, 57. So I'd probably gone 14 years without really doing too much. Um, Started running. quite enjoyed it. I'd always trained as a sort of junior club rugby player, so I'd never really done what I would call anything that was performing. Um, and running was always, in rugby terms, was always, I suppose, it was always training, intense running to become very fit for the short bursts of running you do in a rugby match. So running wasn't enjoyable when I trained in as a rugby player, but I started running and enjoying it. And they do say, you run slow to run fast. That's the sort of the new mantra in running, is zone 2 running. So yeah, running became a joy, just going out. And I think I did a half marathon. That was my sort of target. Did the half marathon during just after COVID. And then I started doing freelance consulting. So I did some contracts. Still no travel, funnily enough. I'm just trying to think when this was now. Probably 18 months in. So we got right through COVID. Following, maybe in 2022, probably 2022, I had another sort of life-changing partner event. So my wife at the time we'd been married for 6-7 years, but been together for nearly 20, decided to call it a day. So yeah, we stayed friends and still are, and that's another story. But we decided to separate, and I think I'd pretty much had it, freelance consulting at that point, so decided that was no longer something for me, and I wanted to do some traveling. So I suppose that brings me up to the post acquisition working era.
Cool. So how did you went from, not somebody who loved running to not just running long distances, but cycling and swimming
Yeah,
as well? So how did you become a GB triathlete? That's
it's a good
that's the big
question.
question.
So that's I still don't know the answer to that one, but I'll tell you what happened. So I I'd separated from a partner, as I've just said, without wishing to repeat myself. I realised then that post working for a company, um, everybody I knew was associated with me and my partner. So I didn't really know anybody that didn't know Paula. I didn't really have anything of my own. So I saw social media ad from a local guy who started a triathlon club 18 months previous. It almost touting for people to come and be part of his triathlon club. And what resonated with me is he didn't need triathletes. He just said, well, you can come and run with us. Or if you're a swimmer, come and swim with us. Or if you're a biker, come and ride with us. So I thought, well, that's great. It's a group of people. They're like-minded. They want to do sport. I'll go along and I'll run with them. And had no intention really of doing the triathlon. But strangely enough, he said, meet me at the pool. So I thought, well, I can swim. I'll meet him at the pool. So I went down to the pool, local pool, met him at 6:15 or 6:30 in the morning. And he said, well, I thought we'd meet here is see if you can swim, because, you might be able to do 2 of the 3 disciplines. So I swam a length of the pool. It's 2 lengths of the pool, 25-meter pool. And I was so exhausted, I could barely breathe. It's unbelievable. I just thought I was better at swimming than that. And he said, well, you can swim. So I could train you to breathe. I can train you to swim, and you can swim as well as run. So I thought, give it a go. So I did. I carried on with the swimming. I joined their running, and one thing leads to another, and eventually they're going out on cycle rides. So they were on, obviously, racing bikes, and I had a mountain bike that I borrowed off my son, and I went out on a mountain bike. And it's interesting. So they there are quite a lot of multi-sports out there, not just triathlon. Duathlon, but running and cycling is quite popular. So I remember I entered a duathlon, and I went along and did the duathlon, where it starts off with I think it was a 5K run, and then 20K bike ride and 5K run, and I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it, and that, I think, that was the point at which I decided I can do this, and I'd like to become a triathlete. So that doesn't explain how I got to become a GB triathlete, but at
Well,
least
let's come to that, because I wanna ask a couple of questions here. So
yeah,
I, I'm sure, like, I could definitely resonate with the running thing that you talked about earlier. I also tried to you do swimming as something to keep me fit after I'd stopped competing in sport. I, like you, didn't enjoy running. I still don't. So I'm intrigued to understand how you went from what was the transition from hating, jogging
yeah,
essentially,
yeah,
and not enjoying it, for that to become joyful, I think you said, which is
yeah,
great. Because actually, personally, I'd like to be able to go and run and enjoy it, because I
yeah,
used to be a good footballer, but similar to you, trained in a way which just jogging really doesn't do it for me, and my bones are a bit broken now.
yeah,
The swimming thing, 100% resonate with that. That swimming is one of the best things I've ever done for my body, but just pushing through those first few times I went swimming, because I can swim, and
yeah,
I'm okay. I'm quite strong, but it was the breathing I found so difficult, and I had to really bite down on staying long enough to be able to get
yeah,
better. I never got any coaching. I'm still not a great swimmer, but
yeah.
I pushed through. So I'm intrigued to know what, when you didn't have to, what made you, what was the process of pushing through or transitioning to from not being very good to being pretty good,
Yeah.
and what made you keep going?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was, I'm a competitive person, not necessarily competitive with other people, but competitive with myself. So I'm a big believer in, there's more in us than we know. And I've had that proven to me so many times. And business is one of those times, is you know, most of my life, where I realized that you could always do more, always achieve more. And a sense of purpose, I was looking for that. I needed a sense of purpose. And this was something that was challenging. Physically, I was quite fit. I was quite healthy. I was very mindful of the fact that I wanted to stay healthy in my older age, wanted to accomplish something as a 60-year-old, which I was fast approaching. Initially, I wanted to do a marathon, which I then went on to achieve. But then this gave me something else, to go at, because it was more challenging than just running a marathon. So yeah, it was that competitiveness in me that drove me.
When you've been good at something, so you've been a good athlete in your younger years, a good rugby player.
Yeah,
How did you, like, in those very early times of, like, stepping out to run or jumping in the pool? How did you force yourself to get over that, not being good at stuff, not being necessarily naturally great at, or not enjoying it? You said the bigger picture of purpose, and that's what kept you
yeah,
going. But how did it feel to not be very good straight away, and what kept you going back the second and third and the fourth time? Because, like, once
yeah,
you start to see improvement, I think we can all work on that improvement. But how did that early part of learning to swim properly, and learning to run for that purpose of distance running, how did what was what were those early sessions like?
yeah. It's a good question. Um, and it was okay, actually. I think that the people I'd surrounded myself with in that triathlon club were very much a beginners triathlon club. It was a new club, so the encouragement I got from others was probably was what's kept me going. And there was no judgment. So I love triathlon sport because there's a competitiveness that everybody has within themselves to do better, but everybody is very supportive. And certainly that it's in my experience that everybody I've been coached with and I've trained within the club has been supportive of everybody at every level, regardless of their ability or what they achieve. Um, so it was made easy in that respect, and it didn't take long from those two 25-meter struggles in the pool before, and I was going 3 times a week, probably more at the start, probably 4 times a week. And I was getting up. I mean, bear in mind this is retirement, and I was getting up at 5:45 in the morning, going to the pool, swimming for an hour. But then it was post-COVID, so a lot of people were working from home. There was a real sense of camaraderie. Everybody went for coffee at Nero's. So all of a sudden, I'd re I'd rekindled this sort of almost like an office environment where I was getting up early, I was going to work, which was the swim, and then I was going for coffee with a group of people, where we'd all encourage each other and talk about triathlon and all the other facets of triathlon that there are. And it's quite a technical sport with a lot involved. Just swimming, well, each discipline in its own right, you could talk about for a while. And yeah, I'm very analytical, do a lot of thinking. I watched a lot of videos on how to swim. There's dozens of drills that you can do to improve your swimming technique. So I spent lots and lots of time focusing on it, really. So yeah, I just became obsessed to become a better swimmer initially. That was my driver.
But the people around you were instrumental in that, in
Yeah,
keeping you going, that, and in,
very
helping you
much so.
get on that progress chart. I think that will resonate with a lot of certainly business owners and people who have been good at sport before. I think the people around you is really important. It's quite similar in business, because I think, I've had really lonely times in business, and then a lot of the joys that I've had through my ups and downs in the business, in the business world, has been actually when it's, for me, with great clients or with great team members or great business partners, and that's really kept me
Yeah,
going. So I think finding whatever that motivation is, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, and whether it's the
yeah,
routine of getting up early and the discipline of going, and then the analytics of improvement, add to that the team element of the kind of the camaraderie that you get, as you said. I think that's really important. I think lots of people around, certainly who are not in the first throes of competitive sport, once we've retired, struggle to find that purpose of getting back into the competitive world. So I think it's a really interesting part of the psychology of performance. You went obviously from struggling to swim 2 lengths
yeah,
to going and representing the GB in a very short space of time, really. From from that perspective, that's
yeah,
kind of exciting for me, because I think, if we want to re-engage with our competitiveness, like
right,
I lost that for a while, and I've been trying to find ways to do that, where, because I'm not necessarily competing in business anymore. I think
yeah.
it's we don't have to do stuff, but it's finding that passion. So talk us through the journey of, so when did you realize that you were pretty decent at the 3 facets of the sport, and then how did you, from that, to get a call to say, we'd like you to come and represent GB? What happened
Yeah.
then?
So my first year in triathlon, I did each of the sort of the distances. Well, I did 3 of the 4. So there's, just to introduce the sport, there's a sprint, which is very short. There's the standard distance, which is your Olympic distance, which, you know, if you've watched the Olympics and seen triathlon there, that's the standard distance. There's middle distance. And the middle distance is where things change, because you're starting to look at endurance, really. The
So you're
swim is,
talking like 5 hours plus for
yeah,
the middle distance?
5 to 6 hours plus for the middle distance. And then there's long distance where you're talking 10, 11, 12 hours, which is, yeah, a different ball game altogether. And I think what I found is that I was better at the longer the distance, the better I became. And there's two reasons for it. One is, I think my base fitness from playing rugby for 20 years was there, and I've got a coach, which I've not touched on, but I'll talk about that later. My coach said he tends to find that when people come to him later in life, that if they've had if they've done sport as a young adult, for a period, 5, 10, 15 years, they tend to be able to pick up sport when they're older,
Yeah.
and perform. And he can see the difference between those that have and those that haven't. So I was fortunate in that respect. Think it's quite common knowledge that, you know, endurance is something that does grow as you get older. And yeah, surprisingly, I didn't realize you could build it even more as you get into your later life. I mean, I was approaching 60. Um, I did those sprint, standard and middle distance events in my first year, and was so sort of blown away at how well I'd done, even though I still wasn't at the sort of GB level. I was getting good times and good results, and I threw myself straight into an Ironman. I entered an Ironman the following year, which coincided with my 60th year. So becoming 60 for me was great. I'd entered a marathon, which I'd mentioned earlier.
Tell everyone what the distances of the three events are for Ironman, just to put it in
Yeah.
context for people.
So for an Ironman, you have got a 3.8 kilometer swim, which is 2.4 miles.
It's a lot more than 50 meters.
It's a lot more than 50 meters. It's a 180-kilometer bike ride, which is 112 miles, and then it's a full-blown marathon at the end, which
For
is
26 miles.
26 point something miles for 42 odd K at the end of it. And I entered that event after I finished a middle distance event in the sort of autumn of which year? Me, I'm trying to think now. Yeah, autumn of 2022, and then I did my marathon in 2023, and my Ironman in Copenhagen, actually. So I chose an Ironman that was relatively flat in terms of, yeah, the run and the ride, and then that was a real eye opener for me, because it was probably one of the hardest physical things it was the hardest physical thing I'd ever done. And when I looked back, think I was fifth in my age group at an Ironman for my first Ironman. And that really then made me think, actually, at my age, I'm quite competitive. And I think that's quite an important differentiator, because as as you get older, the pool of people that you're competing in is forever shrinking, really. So I think, you know, in all honesty, if I tried to be a GB athlete in my 30s or 40s, I doubt very much whether I'd have got there. But I think my longevity of keeping fit, which is an achievement in itself, I accept that, has led really to me being competitive in what is now the 60 to 64 age group, which is what the age group I compete in for GB.
That's amazing. I think I hear what you're saying about the decreasing level of competition, but that's decreasing for a reason, right? So most people can't, you know, they're either no longer on the planet or no longer able to even consider or want to do that. So the physical part, I think we can all kind of, understand those distances. So like people think about a marathon, 180 kilometers, that's like London to Brighton and back, which is kind of quite hard to imagine doing that on your bike if you've not gone and trained for that. The physical part, we can all appreciate how difficult that is. Talk us through the mental part of, because you swim first, right? So you're getting on your bike after you've got wet and in Copenhagen probably cold as well.
Yeah.
What's the mental? What are the mental things that you have to go through and overcome throughout the race? What are the ups and downs like? How do you deal with that? Talk me through that. What stops you from just giving up at certain points?
I think the training is what stops you giving up. And the training is where the hard work's done. I know it's a cliche, but it is. And it's the training that's dark. Those winter evenings where you've got out and got to go and do those runs in the freezing cold and the rain and the dark, because that's the time of day that you end up going out. Those early mornings in the pool, swimming at 6:15 a.m. when it's dark outside when you arrive at the pool. And there's a term called a brick training session where you'll do a long bike followed by a long run. So, my brick sessions leading up to the Ironman were 100-mile bike ride on my own, followed by an hour and a half run, in succession with no gap. And those are tough because you're on your own. Nobody's cheering you on. It's just, what am I doing is the question you ask yourself.
So how do you reconcile that? What are you doing?
It's a really good question. I keep asking myself, why am I doing this? And I mean, it has to be the sense of achievement and the purpose along the way, I think. That's all I can really say. That for me, I do think the camaraderie is a big thing, being part of a community. I love being a rugby player. I love being in a team. It's a club that you'll never leave, because you can always go meet other rugby players and you used to play, but it's not the same when you don't compete. And I never thought I'd get that sense of belonging outside of a work environment again. But then I joined this community of triathlon, and I know so many people now where I live. I literally know dozens and dozens of people. I can walk, I mean, it's a small town, but I can walk through a small town and, on any given day, I can bump into one or two people I know. I could never do that before I entered this sport. So there's a sense of belonging, and people are very kind and complimentary. I am quite humble, use the word, and I am. I try to keep my ego in check. But it's lovely when people come up to you and say, "Well done at that event we were at," and it feels good. And that feeling, yeah, it's a nice feeling. That's all I can say.
There's nothing egoic or egotistical about feeling good about people complimenting you for doing something which is truly exceptional, right? I think that's really great. I think it's so important. I think what you're describing there really is that there are multiple different motivating factors, but you've got a vision, so you've got the race to work towards, and the purpose, which is bigger than the race itself, which is the camaraderie, the community, and also then the kind of staying fit into later life. So I think connecting the motivators and the vision and the purpose is really, I guess, what keeps us all going. So it's really interesting to hear about that, especially the dark days. I've not yet found a reason to to get up and go for a run on a very cold morning, but I am going to commit to looking at some YouTube videos about how to get back into running, because I can't really run very well anymore. I used to be quite a good sportsman. I find running boring and painful and futile. So I'm gonna take your advice and guidance and use that as my motivation to try and find a way to get back into doing that, because I think that's really important. I bike quite a bit already. I'm not saying that I'm going to go and do a triathlon or an Ironman, but I'm definitely going to give the running a go and kind of work out how I feel and analyze the feelings and the motivation, just try and push through. Because I did it with swimming, and once you can do a few lengths of front crawl without like drinking all the pool, you can then start to analyze the improvement. So I think there's motivation for me. I'm sure that there'll be some motivation for other people listening. There's a couple of things I want to just ask before we wrap up. What lessons did you learn in business that helped you in sport?
I think that we can achieve a lot more than we believe. There's a lot more in all of us. And I know it's not a lesson per se, and it's a bit of a cliche, but if you keep persevering at something and adapting to the ever-changing challenges that come your way, you will achieve what you set out to. And you might change what it is you're trying to achieve partway through. That's certainly, whilst it seems in business we always had the goal of selling it, and you could say we achieved that, there were lots of mini goals along the way that changed, and it were stepping stones towards that ultimate sale. And it's the same with triathlon. It's not been linear. It sounds like it because we've sort of skimmed across the surface of what happened over a period of 2 or 3 years. But no, there's been ups and downs and adversity. I got a foot injury after the Ironman that lasted the whole winter. When I reflect back on the business and all the challenges which we've already covered that we overcame there, I'd seen other people overcome injury and knew that it was possible. So perseverance is back to the sort of mindset again, that inner confidence and optimism. I think why not be optimistic? Because the opposite of optimistic is pessimism, which who wants to be pessimistic? Doesn't sound fun to me. And, I'm not looking at everything through rose-colored spectacles, but I think it's better to look on the bright side and look more positively about things than not. So that's what I've learned from life in general, really. Be optimistic, be confident, believe in yourself.
I think patience is a characteristic that I think I never thought I was patient until I sat with a coach and we talked about patience and found some instances of patience. But I think all of the things that you're describing there have patience in them, and it's not necessarily about that linear progression. It's about when the times are not, when you're not moving forward, having something big enough to make you want to keep going and get back onto track, because life will throw things at you, whether that's in business, in your personal life, in your athletic life, or whatever that might be. I think being able to have that thing that keeps you going. We've both had the same foot injury, actually, the plantar fasciitis, which I didn't even know was a thing, and it very nearly made me give up wanting to do any sport at all. But it was that desire to remain healthy, to chase the kids around, to be able to be a bit more mobile in later life. So I think having that patience to keep going, but all of those other character traits are, I think we often don't think we've got them until we look as well. And I think that's actually spending a bit of time looking at what our values and what our behaviors are and what our strengths are. I'm keen to move on to a couple of final questions, but one important question that I kind of ask everybody on the podcast: what is elite performance? What does elite performance mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I still don't see myself as an elite triathlete, and um, I think it's getting elite performance for me is a personal thing. It's different for everybody. At what level you get to, it's about achieving potential. I think that's where I'd leave it. I wouldn't really say any more than that. Whatever potential you've got, and I still think even now, although I've achieved a lot and I feel like I am achieving my potential, it's work in progress. And I don't think we ever finish getting to that level where you say, well, it's done. I'm an elite performer, job done. It's
Great answer. It's a really great answer. I think that is elite performance in itself. You know that there's still more that you can do, but not making the destination the
yeah.
point where you go, right, I am elite. Because I think when we've seen athletes and sports people achieve, then actually, can you keep achieving? Can you keep improving? How do you create some longevity on that? Because if you stop achieving at that point and just don't try and get any better, you'll inevitably get worse. So keeping going, well, you'll certainly get worse in comparison to everybody else because
Yeah.
everybody else is working hard, right? So
Yeah.
maintaining that, I think you're able to maintain that because you've got a clear purpose and a clear vision, right? So I think that helps to be able to go, okay, that
Mm.
was internally elite for me compared to me, and I'm achieving my potential. I think what you say about us being able to achieve more than we know is really, really valuable because I think on a day that we roll out of bed in a great space, I think we all intrinsically know that we can achieve whatever we set out to achieve. I think being able to remember that on the days where we roll out of bed and we're not so clear or we're not so positive, I think remembering that, and especially then if those times become elongated, because like I certainly couldn't run. I could barely walk for the best part of a year without significant pain, and just being able to keep going through that is challenging. So keeping that elite performance and not making it a destination but making it part of the journey, I think is a really powerful thing to share. What are you working on now? So you're talking about constant improvement and in whatever area of your life that is. What are you working on now? What are you preparing for? Any future events coming up that you're involved in?
Yeah, so this year's finished for me, triathlon wise. I was, funnily enough, due to do another Ironman, and due to circumstances around the renovation in my home, I put it on the back burner and decided not to go ahead with it, which was a big thing for me. But nevertheless, next year's a new year. I've already achieved quite a lot this year. As you touched on, I went to the Worlds in Pontevedra in Spain this year. Managed to get a top 10 finish, but I managed to be in the top 3 GB athletes in my age group. So I pre-qualified for Abu Dhabi next year, which is, I think it's another Worlds in the end of next year. I haven't said yes, I'm going to do it yet because I wanted to get over what I was currently doing, but I've got a month or so, I think, before I need to commit. So I suspect I'll throw my hat in the ring, and that'll be my goal for next year. But I've got aspirations to just to keep going. We touched on the ever shrinking pool of athletes. I think if I can keep going till my next age group, which is 65 to 70, I'm hoping, that the pool will be a bit smaller and I might be able to maybe get myself on a podium one day. I know that sounds that probably does sound egotistical, but I just think, why not? Somebody's got to be on it. Why not
Yeah,
me?
why not? It will come down to your constant improvement, your mindset around increasing your performance, whether you call that elite performance or not. But
Yeah,
it won't simply happen by you just staying in the race. I think
yeah,
you'll need to, whether your times improve or not, your performance will be improving because through
older.
time your body is
Yeah,
degenerating, right? So even to maintain the same times is a big step forward in that
yeah,
sense. So I think there's humility in saying, okay, um, people will be slipping away around you, but that's testament to your ability to keep going through later years in life when lots of other people are really struggling with that. So I think there's a huge amount to take from that. I'm excited to see you do it in Abu Dhabi. I think I hope personally, I hope you do, because I think it'll be
yeah,
exciting to track the progress. I'm really grateful for some of the insights you've shared. I think it's a very, it's a humble way to share the insights. It's clearly some deep passion which burns in there, and some desire to delve into what makes great performance, what makes elite performance. So it's been really interesting to open that conversation up, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I'm sure that there's lots of nuggets and lots of insights, and actually the whole story is it has been really interesting to uncover that with you. So I want to wish you all the best, hopefully with the Worlds or whatever it is that you do next in your competitive ventures. And so thank you once again for your time,
Andy. It's been an experience, and I've enjoyed it. So thanks for that.